Hello, and as always, welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. I'm your host, Krish Patel, and today we've got another incredible person just for you. Before we begin, I want to remind you that we have so much going on at the moment, and number one is our month to inspire. We are launching with our live online event, and then we have 3 live workshops, which are just for you. Just get in touch via our website or our social media. And then we have our in-person event, which is on June the 10th in Manchester, where you can get tickets. Inspirational speakers from all over the world to show you that there's nothing that you can't overcome. The perfect dose just for summer, right? Anyway, I want to go into today's guest, Michelle Jones. Michelle takes us on her journey, one of childhood going through struggles such as being bullied and chronic illnesses, to one where she actually started her own business. Now she's starting her own organization called Kind Currency to absolutely transform the way society looks at difficult situations and actually promotes kindness. An incredible person based up in Newcastle, and I know you're going to love this. I hope you enjoy. Michelle Jones, welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really well. Thank you for asking. So, this is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be all about kindness. It's going to be great vibes, and I can't wait. So, do you want to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and we'll just go from there?
Yes. So obviously, as you introduced me, I'm Michelle Jones, and at the moment I'm in a rather windy Newcastle, but I am from the northeast of England, and I grew up in a town called Hartlepool down in Teesside. Currently, I've got several roles in my life, but I'm well known as a wedding planner. So I've got a wedding consultancy, and obviously I support clients in creating their very special days, as well as supporting social enterprise spaces to achieve additional revenues of income through the wedding market, to sustain their purpose, so their education programs, their community side of their business, it's there to support those businesses to ensure that they're giving that value back. And then the other side of my world is my third sector involvement in my charity and voluntary roles, which I've got a number. And within that, I'm developing a startup business called Kind Currency. I'm on a mission to create a world where we have a currency based around kindness, and it is a tool to really harness the concept of the kindness economy. And I'm hoping that it's one solution for 2 major problems, and that's taking the fight against the climate emergency to support the fight against poverty, and really impacting the amount of people that we've got currently living in deprivation as well. So it's a concept that I hope many people obviously find that they can take part in the community to help those that are helping others.
Wow, this is going to be so fun delving into this, Michelle. I can't wait. So, where does it all begin for you? Like childhood, where did you grow up? What was brothers, sisters? What dreams did you have as a kid? Like, where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, obviously, who we are today is very much it's all of that experience through our years, isn't it? That lead us to the moment that actually we bloom as the individuals that we then come to be. For me, obviously, in my early childhood, I came from a very obviously loving family, hardworking family, and I really feel quite privileged, to have that care and love and obviously support system there. Wasn't obviously from very much a working class northeast family as well, so my privilege was very much around the love that I experienced. But in from a sort of school perspective, I was an SEN child, so I'd entered into the school system, and the teachers thought that I had special educational needs and wasn't going to be able to stay in mainstream school. And it was actually down to an individual that went, hang on a minute, actually, this child can't hear. They don't need to be removed from the school setting and put into a special educational needs setting, which happened a lot in the 80s. They'd picked up on the fact that I had a barrier. And then I was able to obviously go through the processes to overcome that barrier. But that then put me in a position where I was so far behind my peers that throughout my education, I was constantly in intervention. I was constantly the child that was taken out of the classroom to go and practice reading. It affected my range of vocabulary. It affects what words I can say now. And now, obviously, I've got the added dimension that I've got chronic illnesses and take medication that then trip me up as well. So, but it sort of started at that point, because that showed me that the people we are surrounded by have a direct impact on us as people and our future and our opportunities. Like, if that teacher hadn't have been there at that time, I'd have been moved out of that setting and went obviously through an education path that wouldn't have provided me with the opportunities that I've enjoyed and experienced throughout my life. So that one individual understanding my situation completely transformed what my outcome could have been. So I really appreciate that. And then within that school as well, when I've reflected, they actually give me opportunity that I sought myself. So, and I don't know if it was because I was getting so much support, not just within reading, it was like everything. It was maths, writing, reading. I needed help across the board. And I think whenever I asked to do something, they just said yes, because I wasn't excelling in anything. I wasn't a child that was highly academic, so I wasn't getting the results. I was failing a lot of the time because I couldn't do things like from an academic perspective. And I always remember a standout moment for me, especially when we think about kindness. I'd started to take an interest in what it was to help others. And I don't know if it was because that teacher had instilled in me the understanding that she'd actually provided me with support. She'd understood what I was dealing with and then put the procedures in place to ensure that it didn't damage me going forward. So one of the first things I remember doing is comic relief came out. It was like in the sort of about 1988. Okay. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. This is fantastic. And going from being quite a quiet child, I then approached my teachers and said, I want to do something for comic relief. I want us to do something as a school, in primary school. Can I put on a show? And convinced my friend to do it with me. And we did this show, and we were clowns. And we raised money. Okay. And I remember the weeks leading up to it, we were practicing in our playground. And obviously we then had buckets, and the school made quite a big thing about it. And off that sort of fed my need to do things that made a difference. So from that, I sort of got involved with guides and brownies and really enjoyed that side of my life, because that was all about being part of a community and coming together and doing things for the greater good of the community. But I sort of got involved with the fasting. Can you remember the 24-hour fasting in the 80s? And which was hilarious, because I always remember one of the times that I did it, and my dad was sort of making it really difficult for me to, coming in with like Greg's pasties, mm-hmm. and like waving them in front of my nose, and trying to resist being from the Northeast and trying to resist Greg's pastry is really difficult. But I was doing small things like that throughout my life and really sort of enjoyed the way, they made me feel. And the fact that I was actually doing something, my actions were actually helping another person. And at the same time, doing things like, oh, can I do this show? I remember getting to harvest festivals and saying, oh, can I do this to raise some money for this? And it usually had the context of me doing a performance. And that sort of fed the performance side of me and the creative side of me, because in my sort of home setting, I was always designing things, drawing. Like, I was fascinated with my fashion wheel. But I was absolutely from about the age of 5, where I'd been like a bridesmaid, fascinated with the wedding industry. So I was always drawing bridesmaid dresses and bridal gowns and floral bouquets and cakes and stuff. And so I had sort of themes going on in my life, which were this losing myself within what the wedding sort of the whole context of the wedding was, which had been impacted by all the royal weddings that had played out as well throughout the 80s. This whole element of giving back alongside feeding sort of a performance part of me, which is a child that felt very unconfident within the education setting and around my peers. That's where I felt confident. And obviously then me having this part of my world where I did suffer from really low self-esteem. I didn't feel intelligent or worth anything, and really struggled, within that measurement of society that we experience as young children in our school setting. So there was all these themes playing out in my world. And obviously as I progressed into sort of that high school setting, it tips, doesn't it? Because you go into a new setting and they don't know you, you don't know them. And I was then in a position where I wasn't going to get any support. So I went into the high school setting actually quite far behind. I remember leaving primary school with my report and my mum trying to instill in me how proud she was of how well I'd done in primary school. And I remember the feeling inside to this day where I just kept reading the fact that back then in the 80s, they put you down as an age, what your ability was in relation to age.
Right.
Being sent into a high school setting where they were saying to me, I had the academic ability. I was 2 years behind. So I was like an 8-year-old. And that stuck with me. And I just kept thinking, oh my God, like, I'm never going to achieve anything. And going into that setting and thinking, I'm not going to, I'm going to really, really struggle. And then realizing that actually this is a huge comprehensive with so many children in it. And it was very much structured as in like the high achievers were who were nurtured. There was no support there for somebody like me who needed support. There was no systems in place where it was going to nurture the qualities each individual child had.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was. It's like when people say to me, how did you manage to go from being stuck inside and severely agoraphobic to then being able to get back out and live and rebuilding your life and managing chronic illness? Something in me switched and it was like, I've got to do this for myself. I've got to put in a lot of work to ensure that I come out at the other end with some sort of future. And that whole thing, and it was sort of driven by fear. So I grafted so hard
Wow.
intensive school. I remember, and I developed, I think that's where my first signs as well of having OCD really presented, because I remember working so hard and late into the night on getting things right, and making sure that my work might not be the best in terms of the sort of best use of words and things like that within the context of it, but I get my point across. But I'd really present it really well, so it sort of give that really nice first impression. And then within that that effort showing, that I wanted to, and that paid off, because I had like a teacher who had said to me, right, Michelle, I want to support you. If you come to my house on an evening, I will support you in terms of reading development. And obviously going into school, being a school governor now, like for me, that's one of my key areas of focus. Being able to read opens the world up to you, and being able to read fluently, and have understanding through that reading helps you be, a successful person within society, and without that, it closes so many doors, it presents so many barriers. And working at the food bank now, within one of my voluntary capacity, that's where I see that, I see it very much of the people that have slipped through that education system and can't read and write, have got the whole world closed off to them. There's no opportunity there for them. So for me, that teacher doing that again, it was that another person going to me, I can see you, and I can see you trying, and I'm going to support you, and we're going to work through this together. And I was really grateful for that. And I remember like she then gave me like speaking roles in sort of assemblies at Christmas, you know. And I remember one Christmas I saying, right, we're going to do the nativity for the Christmas show. And I was like, oh, I want to perform in it. She was like, no, you're going to narrate it. And I was like, what? I can't speak
Like, no way. No.
Job in English, I read like shaking. I tripped over the words. Do you know, I'd had one really bad English teacher who made me read every lesson on purpose to be mean, because she knew I was going to trip up. And by that point, I'd managed to get into the top set of English, and she didn't think she didn't think I deserved to be there. And very kindly, my peers knew what she was doing. So when they used to always say to me, if you get to a word where you can't say it, do you know, I can't get my tongue around it, you don't understand it, you don't know how to say it, stop and we'll say it. And that's what used to happen. I would stand there and I'd read, and rather than me then stuttering and getting upset, the other kids would just say what the word was. You know,
amazing.
So she lost her power.
Oh, really quick one about this, Michelle, because this is really interesting. That self-esteem, right? You say, and it seems that you didn't have any, right?
Yeah.
But how can you speak in front of people? Because that's some people's worst fear. You're doing it in front of people. How does that work?
It being a very quiet child and unable to hear. The only thing, because my mum always says it was like picking up a different child from the hospital. Obviously, because I'd gone from not saying much to then having a voice. But throughout my life, I know that when you talk to people, they open up to you then, you know, and then you share something through that conversation. And so there's nothing to be lost within the fear of speaking. Do you know, don't get me wrong, like if I'm going to be going into a room full of people I don't know, I feel nervous. Do you know, if I'm going to be talking openly and honestly to people, I feel nervous. If I'm going to be starting a conversation with somebody that I look up to, you know, or I hold in high regard, I feel nervous. Do you know, standing up in front of a whole class, a whole assembly room full of children, which I've done in some of my roles, that's nerve-wracking. Do you know? So I do feel nervous, but I sort of step into that fear and think, well, if I don't do it, then I'm not going to help other people, do you know, and I'm not going to get the help I need. You know, so the bigger fear for me is actually the outcomes, not achieving those outcomes. So just jumping into it and doing it. And I suppose because when I was younger, I've realised that actually if you don't pop your head above the parapet, you stay underneath it, and that doesn't do anybody any favours, you know. And it's that choice, isn't it, of thinking, right, I'm either going to feel petrified and just do it anyway. I'm going to feel petrified and then feel like I've let myself down, or feel absolutely horrendous that you've lost the opportunity. So it's the balance of the fear, basically, do you know, and what am I most fearful about? And because I always had to put my hand up as well and ask for help, I think that's helped, because if I'd have sat in that classroom and not constantly gone, but I don't understand, please, and somebody show me, do you know, or I would never have got anywhere within my education, because I constantly didn't understand. I had to constantly speak up and say, I don't understand. Do you know? And for me, that's something that should be instilled in everybody. I think we do have a fear around like being able to say, I don't understand this, and or I need help with this.
Asking questions as well. Like we automatically nod our head and just basically yes, and because we're scared of what other people might think as well, especially as kids, right? You want to be a sheep, you want to fit in like everyone else. But then if we do that as kids, guess what's going to be the product as adults?
Yeah, exactly.
Same, right?
I know. And nobody, you always feel like if you say something wrong, like I say stuff wrong all the time, that people laugh at you, do you know? But actually, if they do, it lasts a few seconds. The long-term aspect of not putting your hand up and saying, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you explain? No, I've not experienced that. I don't understand. That actually has a long-term impact on you. But those few minutes of people going, oh, God, she's stupid. that only lasts a small period of time, then normally they'll sit there and go, oh, well, I didn't understand that. So she's not as daft as what we've just thought, but people might be unkind, but so what? Let them be unkind, because they're not having any impact on your world. Actually, not speaking up is going to have an impact on your world. Or it's just understanding your position in your life is what's important to you, not other people.
And it's so important. As I actually shared it today on social media with our Tales to Inspire, that we focus so much on answers, but actually, if the questions we ask are rubbish questions, then what is the point in having a good answer? Actually, the best questions are the ones that we don't necessarily have the answers for, which mean we have to ask more questions. So the key is in the questions, not the answers. But at school, everything's about answers. And everything we do here in society, we talk about answers all the time. Or what's this? What's that? And you actually know sometimes there's not an answer, and just start asking better questions. No, I love it. I love where this is going. So, Michelle, high school, you're in high school. Let's go from high school onwards, like from once you finish high school, where does your journey go?
Yes. So once I'd finished high school, I was very much into that sort of performance world. So I'd gone on to do performing arts at college, and then during my time at college, I started to become quite poorly in high school. I'd started to obviously seek sort of like medical intervention for obviously different physical experiences that I was going through. In college, I was very much in this balance of this world of being extremely ambitious and aspirational and wanting to go on, and achieve great things, and having something running alongside of me that I had no idea the impact it was going to do and actually change my life completely. So I'd gone through college, and I'd got quite involved within the art management side of performance arts, and decided to apply for stage school, but also apply to universities to go on and look at this whole section around sort of art and event management, which the wedding element came back into play as well. And so went off to university. And I went off to university at a time where I was going through several medical investigations to find out what all of these experiences that I was having meant, getting diagnoses for different chronic health situations. But at that time, I was also starting to experience mental health illness, which was running alongside the chronic conditions that I was experiencing, but didn't know what it was at all. So went off to university in the Midlands. Again, felt very ambitious, and excited, for the world to open up to me. I'd grown up in a town, and because of my experiences through school, and I'd hit a really bad element of bullying within high school as well, that really affected me. I just wanted to leave, the town. I wanted to run forwards, and didn't want to look back. And so I moved out of the region and went to university in the Midlands, and obviously was so looking forward to connecting with lots of interesting people who were all studying, different courses, came from different backgrounds, had completely different life experiences to me. And that I found very, very exciting, and went very aspirational. But quickly, my health situation took over. And although I was doing what I could in uni in terms of being within that media world, that art and media world, as well as studying, and because I was producing and presenting local TV programs and studying and having a social life, but I was being very poorly at the same time. And it came to a head where I developed a chronic condition called agoraphobia, which is a mental health condition. And it was an absolute reaction to not being able to cope or understand what was happening to my body at that time, that I was obviously had chronic health conditions that were still being investigated, still being diagnosed, still trying to balance what was going on, medication, what was going to happen treatment wise. And it was like the world just stopped, couldn't cope. And I'm saying I couldn't cope. That is the wrong, language is quite important to me. And that's probably the wrong thing to say. It wasn't that I couldn't cope. I was poorly. And the consequence of that was I went into a bubble, and that bubble protected me. So if I sort of didn't go out, didn't see people, didn't live, didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't do anything, if I just existed, I existed, and the rest of the world didn't matter. I could just deal with all these symptoms. So I just became an existing symptom.
Wow.
And just that was it. And then again, it was one of those moments where the only place I was going was hospital. I couldn't even have somebody within my sort of bubble just in conversation. So at this point I'd have to go back home to my mum and dad's, and if my mum a best friend came around, obviously I've always thought of as being like an auntie figure. I couldn't even cope with that, even though she was really understanding. Everything was just too much. And it was that point of me taking ownership of my situation. And I don't know to this day what it was, but it was that decision. I had two paths. I either lived or I didn't. And at that moment in time, I was very, very lucky because I was with the person in my life that is now my husband today.
Right.
And I always credit him, because I don't think if he'd have been in my world, I'd have took that path of thinking, no, I do want to live. Do you know, I want to have a life. And his love and support was what drove that decision. Do you know, it meant that I had somebody else there that I had to take consideration for. And because he loved me unconditionally, and if I'd have taken another path, that would have like hurt him for the rest of his life. So it was that conscious decision of me thinking, right, no, I want a future. And the first steps are the hardest, and that whole period of my life was so challenging. And it was a big part of it was learning to accept the fact that I was going to have a life of chronic illnesses, not just one, but multiple chronic conditions that presented multiple symptoms that were very difficult to manage and control. And within that, I developed a mental health routine that was then going to play a major part in my life, and how to then try to stop that mental health problem from stopping me living my life. So I went through, obviously, a period of time where I just had to get to the point where I could live with these conditions, accept what was going on. And university had been really, really understanding. So I'd managed to get back, finish my degree, and went out into the big wide world. But again, it was one of those things that whilst I was at university, I was going through the same processes that I'd done since I was younger, and looking for opportunities to help people, and make that difference. And because that for me then became a big support system in me moving forward with my life.
Michelle, quickly, what were the chronic illnesses that you had/have? What were
Right, so they come under several different headings. So there's three that come under gastro and colorectal, so that whole digestive end-to-end situation. A couple of them are under gynae.
Okay.
One's neurological / sort of rheumatology and things, and then the other skeletal. So the sort of bowel and stomach disorders, womb and ovary disorders, scoliosis, which is like curvature of the spine and stuff, and then nervous disorder, fibromyalgia, and then agoraphobia and OCD, running alongside of those, so yeah, several different things going on all at the same time, and one tended to, if one flared, the other would flare. So we all have like a knock-on effect. I've actually just had major surgery just before Christmas, that I'm obviously been recovering from. And that's been a big, massive step forward in terms of that surgery's been put off for a long time to help me to manage being a mum of young children. So it's understanding what that surgery would then go on to prevent me from doing, and obviously what it would prevent me from doing wasn't going to be a capacity that I wanted to take on having young children. Now, obviously, they're a bit older. I agreed to then have the surgery at the point where they were like, no more, Michelle, you need to have this surgery now, and gone through that. So my world's going through a transition at the moment because of that, which is interesting on a daily basis. Definitely.
So many learnings.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's what's really interesting around the conversation around disability and chronic illness, because society seems that demographic of people, people like me, is being unemployable, but we've got a right to earn. And we have a right to earn because we have basic needs as humans. And unfortunately, those basic needs means we've got to spend money. So to feed yourself, to even drink, you've got to pay your water company, to have a roof over your head, to be warm, to have clothing, that all costs money, and actually for a demographic of society where people are conditioned to think, oh, well, actually, we can't employ them, because actually they're going to need this amount of time off through illness, they're going to need this amount of time off through medical appointments. Actually, all of those things are not a barrier to you employing somebody, that's got these challenges, because them living with these challenges throughout their life is provided them with so many skills that the sort of able-bodied person will never be able to harness. The amount of flexibility, that, and sort of that upskilling in areas that we've had to learn on our feet, and pivot within a moment, and be driven, to get through pain, to get through difficult periods, but to think outside the box as well. There's so many skills that our community have, because we've got that health disadvantage, are really valuable, to the world of work, and it's sort of crucial that we keep having that conversation, so that we all have that right to earn, and feed ourselves and clothe ourselves, so we don't have a demographic that live in poverty because of something that they've never wanted to have to live through. It's something that they're having to, though. But no, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and sort of reaching out to society to change that understanding.
Right. So let's go. So we've been from talking about all of the struggles that you've been through, high school and then growing up. So how does the wedding company start? How does, I guess, going into the kindness currency and things that start there, obviously having a family, if you can go into that, Michelle, that'd be fantastic.
Yes. So obviously out into the world of work, as I say, was challenging. And through those sort of initial early years, at the time, I didn't think I was attaining the work experience, the employed work experience that I wanted. On reflection, I realized it was exactly what I needed. So I'd managed, thankfully, to secure a position within a personnel department and in London, and which is obviously now known as sort of like people management, HR and things. And I had a very sort of focused role where it was all about supporting the person. So actually my own adversity helped within that role, because I could really, really show empathy and understand and get leaders to understand what we were dealing with. And looking back, the skills I learned within that job absolutely feed into everything I do today, and wouldn't have been successful within my role as being a wedding planner and within all my charity in voluntary roles and now within the delivery of kind currency, without being given the opportunity to support people on a daily basis, that whole person through their employment. And I dealt with some very challenging, cases. And I'm saying cases, the people, but in terms of case files, some very complex needs within that role that I'm proud to have been part of supporting that individual, through that part of their life. But that provided me with so much understanding about the disadvantages people face, the challenges that they've got to overcome, how we're all completely different, and how one situation for one person doesn't work for another person, and needing to take the whole person and think, actually, what can we do that's actually going to make a difference to this person to help them be employed by us, but live a kind of quality of life. And that came through that role. And I was in London at this point, and then we decided to move to Newcastle because we wanted to buy a house, a house with a garden, which wasn't possible in London. And I missed being by the coast because I grew up on the coast, and I wanted it all. I'd gone from being a person who was agoraphobic to then managing agoraphobia, which meant I spent every day out and about, but constantly in a state of anxiety. But I was fine to do that. I would rather live and be out and about and be in a constant state of anxiety than actually being in a bubble and not experience anything. But I was like, I want the beach on my doorstep. I want the countryside on my doorstep, but I also want to be in the city. So for me, like the Northeast was going to provide that opportunity. So we moved up to the Northeast. And around the same time, so this was sort of my mid-20s, my consultant started to say, well, Michelle, you really need to think about having a family because you've got an earlier cut-off point. You might not be able to have a family. We don't know that unless you start to have a family. And then obviously we've got the processes in place, see how that would play out. I'd already had this conversation at 22 with obviously my now husband about, right, listen, they're saying that having kids might not be a possibility. You can walk away from me at this point. Do that because I can't be responsible for you not achieving something you really want to achieve. And he was like, no, because there's other opportunities, to have children. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to create them. There's lots of we just want to love children. So that for me was really reassuring. But then when it gets to the point of the hospital saying, right, well, actually, now you need to do it now. That's a whole different kind of, we were both, I was still trying to accept. I was still getting diagnosed with conditions. I was still going through like all sorts of treatment. I was still trying to accept what my world was. I hadn't even got my head to that point yet. And then somebody saying you need to sort of think about this huge element of your life. So we got married, and then we're like, right, okay. And in our heads, we were like, it's not going to happen. I've been told that we're not going to have children. So it's not going to happen. So when I fell pregnant, naturally, it's a shock to everybody. Like, even my doctor was just like, no, you can't be. And I was like, I am. I've done loads and loads of this. And so this next stage in my life started to develop. With that came a lot of anxiety. I was like, how can I physically be a mom and manage all my health problems when I'm literally just getting through each day as it is, when I've got this other life that's going to depend on me so much? And again, it was one of those moments in my life where I was like, you need to step up to it. And actually, that is probably the biggest decision I ever made, because I transitioned at that point from somebody who didn't live a life of chronic illness. I lived a life with chronic illness, and was like, I don't want this. It affected my life massively. I don't want it to affect my children's life.
Yeah.
So I resigned. I was like, I'm going to be stay-at-home mom. We'd worked out actually that was going to be best for us as our situation. But then I had that, something I hadn't had for a long time, was that aspirational need come back. And I was very much knew that I needed to do something to get me through each day as well, where I was able to help other people And I didn't know what that was going to look like. And then this baby came along, who was a very demanding baby. He knows how demanding he was, because we say to him all the time about how demanding he was. And he was a real lesson. Even midwives were like, we can't believe you had another one. Off the back of that, he's lush now. He's absolutely lush, and he was lush then. He was sent, and we had to step up to his need.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience, and it still is today. Like, being a parent is an amazing opportunity to experience. If you get to have that, it's just a gift. And so we felt very, very lucky, to have our children. And it opened up a community to me. So it was something I'd been struggling to do in Newcastle, and have access to sort of support systems where I could help people and actually do that giving back that I'd found really helpful in my own journey. And because we lived in a deprived area, we had the local sewer start centres.
Okay.
So I had this new baby. I didn't know many people around and about. I didn't have a support system locally, and I knew I needed to build that quite quickly, to help me. I had a baby and I was chronically ill. I need support. So I started going to the local sewer start centres, and they were incredible, absolutely incredible. And the amount of community support that they give you as an individual, and then to obviously that impacts your family, is just so invaluable. I know the government's currently looking at opportunities to bring those sort of family hubs back into circulation and to make them what they once were, because actually once we lost them, the damage is been, well, obviously the damage we can see today.
So these are community-based hubs,
yes,
that support mothers in specific.
With families.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So their focus is the child. So their focus is very much, it was 0 to 15. And it
right, so not the mother.
Primarily focusing around the 0 to 5.
Right.
And the support of that child by supporting the family as well, and for me it was supporting the mum. Wow. And within that, obviously I was talking to people, and I was saying, I'd like to earn, I've got a need to earn. I know I'm going to be a stay-at-home mum, but I want to earn. And before Dylan was even 7 months old, I'd done a course in childminding, because that had been presented to me as an opportunity, and absolutely loved the concept of what it meant to be a childminder, and then stepped my toe into that whole thing of running your own business. And I loved it because I was helping other people live their life, whilst I cared for their child. And we had so much fun.
I can imagine a day in your life as a kid, if you were childminding. It would be amazing, Michelle.
Yeah, it was just a full day of fun activity. And because I had to focus on the needs of these children, it meant I had to step up again and sort of really manage my health conditions. So it was down to that, asking questions, saying to consultants, no, this treatment's not working, and doing a lot of research. And I've spent a lot of time researching new treatments. What's going on in the States, what's going on in Europe, what's going to be accessible to me in the UK.
Michelle, if you could tell me more about where your journey with your business is now, and with Kind Currency and your voluntary work, and then we'll go into some quick fire questions, if that's okay.
Yes. So I've been heavily invested as a volunteer in the sort of third sector, and run charities obviously throughout my adult life, and that constantly exposed me to disadvantage within our society. And for me, it led to me being very passionate about inclusion, but also wanting to really alleviate the barriers people face in terms of access and opportunity. And at the same time, my wedding business exposed me to the wealth gap. And I went from meetings of trying to support families, put food on the table, and be able to get through that week and be warm, to then having people who wanted to spend penny pinch, but spending a lot of money and not then necessarily pay suppliers who were on a much lower salary, their worth. You could really see how sort of that need versus greed situation played out. So that for me exposed a huge gap we needed to close within our society. When we talk about leveling up, we talk about actually ensuring that the people at the bottom can achieve their basic human needs. And it actually made me really angry. And that anger developed into an idea. And I was like, right, I want to really make a dent. I want to really support people to overcome the barrier that's keeping them living in deprivation. But I wanted to niche down on what that meant, because I was coming face to face with people every day that were volunteering, that were carers, that worked in the NHS, that we really depended upon as a society, but then they were struggling themselves. They had this adversity, and we went as a society supporting them. So it's like the nurse going home at the end of the day with a food bank parcel. That doesn't sit well with me. So, I'm like, no, that shouldn't happen. She spent the day sort of supporting people with their health, potentially held somebody's hand as they've passed over, then supported that family. And then she's going home at the end of the day, or he's going home at the end of the day with a food bank parcel. It doesn't sit right. So this anger built into an idea. And then I also wanted to be able to support this idea with laid impact and start to explore what that could look like. And that's where kind currency bloomed, and that's where with kind currency, I'm hoping to be able to alleviate one problem with another problem, so that's taken two big society problems that we face at the moment, and that's the climate emergency and the poverty crisis, to help offset each issue against the other, and actually allow us as a society to go, right, here's a resourceful tool for us to actually change people's lives, actually protect people and protect the planet at the same time.
So kind currency sounds like it's money or a credit card or a debit card, and the currency. So that's the currency side of it, and the kindness. So what is it? I go into a shop, I have a kind currency card, and they give me something for free. How does it work?
It's a subscription membership. So you subscribe to be a member as a consumer, and then you would be able to access the ethical businesses that we will be supporting in the community, and to shop with them, and through shopping with them in that subscription, we then obviously have a community fund, which then invests in the people in society that we're dependent upon, and giving all that kindness and helping them overcome their need, and obviously they'll go on to do more kindness. It's based on the Pay It Forward scheme. I learned that people want to be kind, they want to be charitable, they want to help others, they want to make kinder lifestyle choices, they want to shop kinder, they want to be more conscious with the consumer, like with their consumerism. But they felt it was all too over consuming. They couldn't afford a lot of to give a lot to charity. They couldn't afford to make that much of a difference. They they found that the time poor. They didn't have the energy, and they didn't, obviously, the effort element as well. So there was all these barriers that are stopping people from being kind, to people and planet on a daily basis. And so the more I asked, actually, what is it that's preventing you? The opportunity then came to me in terms, if I can provide people with an easy opportunity to be charitable and help others, and to support ethical businesses and to shop kind, then we give them that opportunity to help people and help the planet, without it costing them a lot of money, without it impacting any of their time, without it using any of their energy, and making it really easy so they don't need to put any effort in, so it's giving them the opportunity without having to do very much themselves.
So in terms of subscription model, I would subscribe to the kind currency model. I'd give them my email address.
Yeah.
And then would I have to pay anything?
No, yes. So obviously you'd have to pay a subscription donation, which goes into the chat community fund. So that's a small charity donation that goes into the community fund. which is then you obviously doing your bit to protect people, and then we provide you with offers and discounts to use within local ethical businesses, making it really easy for you to make those conscious consumer decisions.
Amazing. Okay, so and is it within any industry? Is it like sports gear, food,
everything? It's
restaurants, everything?
It's B2C as well as B2B. So we capture your full lifestyle, and whatever you need on that morning when you wake up, you'll be able to use your membership to support an ethical business, whilst at the same time you're helping people in society, but you're also helping yourself as well, because you're going to benefit financially.
I love it. Is it an app? Is it a website? Both?
It's both. But obviously we're still very much in the early days. We're currently building an MVP to test the market. So people need to be listening out and looking out for when that subscription launches, so that they can jump on board and go, right, I'm doing my bit for planet and people. I'm part of the kind currency community, and being part of the kind currency community means you're being a kind person, and if you're finding that a struggle at the moment, then jump on board, because this is a community that's going to help you.
I absolutely love it. I think it's an amazing concept. Why not have a kind currency? Why not?
Yeah.
Why is it taking so long to get to this point? I love it.
At the end of the day, kindness at the moment is very wordy. It's something people say, but it's actually an action. Kindness is an action. And for it to have the impact, we need to be physically doing it, not just saying it. So kind currency gives people the ability to do kindness and not just say it, because words don't really have the impact that we actually need.
So true.
At the moment.
So true. And so people want to find out about kind currency or yourself, is there a way they can go to either social media or website or LinkedIn to find you?
Yeah, so our website is kindcurrency.co.uk, and we're across all socials. We're just literally new to TikTok at the moment, but you'll either find us at Kind Currency Club, which is Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, or at Kind Currency, which is Twitter, and obviously LinkedIn as well. And people can come and find me as well. Everybody knows me through sort of a Shell's Kind World or Kindness Makes the World Sparkle. So people can find it as well through me. And I'm always happy to chat with people as well if they wanted to know more.
Amazing. Oh, amazing. Well, I think it's incredible to go from your journey of lots and lots of hurdles to being bullied and the struggles that you've had physically and mentally, having a kid, creating your own business, and then doing the impact that you've always wanted to do. And incredible. And I remember last time we talked about how you work in a wedding industry, you work in a different industry to the kind industry where you want, and you see the discrepancies between both industries. And it's like this constant, we talked about it before, balance, right? I think you're amazing. I think you're fantastic. I think you're so cool.
Thank you.
You're brilliant. It's been so good, this. Are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Yes, go.
Right, so go. Wow. So what's going to happen is, Michelle, I'm going to start the sentence, and if you can finish the sentence. So that's the aim. If you want to explain it, you're more than welcome to, but quick fire, let's just go through it and we'll see where we get to. So first question, kindness is?
Me doing.
Kindness is me doing. I love it. Life is about?
Experience.
Community is?
Everything.
Education should?
Be for all.
I love it. Children can?
Do everything. Absolutely everything. Much better than we can as adults.
I love it. If there was a government law, like one law, and it was the Michelle Jones law, what would that law be and why?
Oh, that's a big one.
It is a big one. It's a biggie.
For me, it's got to be about rewarding kindness.
Okay.
That actually, if you're kind, then society gives back to you. And that unkindness, there's a law to obviously eradicate unkindness. and that law would be around supporting people to be kind. So it would be a kind law. It's not about saying to people, right, you're unkind, you're a bad person, so we're not going to help you. It should be a law of, right, let's help everybody be kind. And we need the processes there to reward kindness, and then we need the processes there to help people be kind. Because a lot of the problem with our laws that we've got in society is they view people as being bad people, and what actually it is that person's not actually being given an opportunity. They've not been given a helping hand. So there needs to be a law around supporting people to be kind.
A bad person, or
I don't know how to put that in. Yeah, I don't know how to put that into the right context. Like there's no bad people. It's just people that need like support.
Yeah. When we talk about bad people, or people who do bad actions or negative actions, really they're just so far from happy. Because if they were happy, they wouldn't do those things.
Yeah, and it comes back. Yeah, it comes back to the opportunity. It really gets on my nerves when people say that, but we've all got the same opportunities. We haven't. What my opportunities are look completely different to another's, and sometimes both of those opportunities that people are presented with aren't great.
Yeah.
So and it's like that whole second chance concept. It's not a second chance. They haven't been given the chance in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's ensuring, or like it should be a law around ensuring that everybody receives opportunity, the right opportunity.
And when it comes to second chances, why do we only give people 2 chances?
Exactly.
Well, I need, if for my biggest struggle, let's just go with food. For right now, I am terrible with food. Okay, I can't eat the right thing at all. But if I only gave myself 2 chances, I would have not got past 9 years old.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm 30 now. So like, you know what I mean? Like you have to keep giving yourself. It's not about how much you punish yourself for doing wrong. It's about how many times you get back on the horse.
Yeah.
So you can continue. But we judge others when they can't get back on the horse.
Yeah. And it's also giving people the opportunity to choose not to get back on that horse as well, and actually go, nah, I'm doing this instead.
Yeah, I'm doing, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Giving up is okay if it's not the right thing for your life. But we get told never give up. Actually, if it's doing you no good, give it up.
Yeah.
Do something new. I love it. Right. My final 2 questions, Michelle, that I ask every Tales to Inspire guest. So my first question, Michelle Jones, what is your definition of the word inspire?
My definition of the word inspire is it's a feeling. Being inspired is a feeling, and it's not necessarily what somebody says or does. It's how a situation then impacts the next. So inspiration builds for a better future.
I love it. I love it. It's not about what someone does or someone is. And I love that. And it builds for that better future. Fantastic. So no one's actually ever said that definition. I've asked it to nearly 100 people now. Really cool. I love that. The second question, the final question that we ask every Tales to Inspire guest, if you were to live your bestest life, right? You go into your hundreds and you're like, you've nailed it. You've done everything you wanted to do. And you're looking back on your life. What is the biggest impact or proudest moments that you want to have achieved during your lifetime?
I've already achieved it. So, and nothing will ever outdo this. So I had huge fear about making my children late for school because of me being poorly. Obviously I could be up all night being ill. I could have a really bad morning. And I thought if I made them late for school on a daily basis, it would massively impact their life. And it would, children that are persistently late for school are lower achievers, unfortunately. And that was a massive fear of mine. And I put in systems in place, and I was poorly a lot. And my children, all the time because they're both obviously now able to take themselves to school, they were never late. I got them there on time every single time. And the sense of achievement I felt when my last day of actually taking my youngest to school came, I was a mess. I got in and I literally cried. And and it's funny because it makes me so emotional when I think about it. It can't be measured in any other sense that anybody else can measure it in. It is my biggest success that I got my children to school every day. And it's something I'm so proud of, that other people just probably think, oh, that's a really weird thing to be proud of. But for me, it will be and always will be. I could make millions and save the world and make such a difference in millions of people's life, and that will be awesome. And that is what I would love to achieve. But my biggest success is getting my children to school every day, because it was something I never thought I'd be able to do.
Oh, amazing. So heartfelt as well. Oh, and your kids, so they're not at school anymore?
No, they're school age, but they go with their mates.
Perfect. They're too cool for mum.
Yeah.
None of that. Oh, they never get there on time anymore.
Yeah, that's nothing to do with me.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much. Just want to acknowledge you and say thank you for sharing your tale. Thank you for being you, to be honest, and your determination and your heart to make an impact in this world where an impact is really needed, is through kindness, is incredible. So thank you for sharing your tale. How amazing was that? Michelle goes through so much in her story, and I absolutely love it. I could have spoken to her and listened to her for literally 2, 3, 4 hours, but I booked an afternoon off. It would have been wonderful. But she talks about one particular thing that really has connected with me since, and that is that kindness is an action. It's not just words. It's easy for us to say certain things, but to do certain things is really tough. Action is where everything is at. So can we focus on taking that action in whatever way that we may think is best for our lives, and as Michelle has shown, for the lives of others? I want to thank you for being part of this inspirational movement. As always, you can be part of this in terms of donating as little as £2 a month to patreon.com/Tales to Inspire podcast and become a patron of this movement. But as always, let us know what you think. Give us a review on Apple, on YouTube, on Spotify, whatever you listen to or watch us on at the moment. And thank you for your support.